All right, we're back. This is our first time using Riverside because we cheaped out and tried to use Zoom for our first few. But now we have the problem where Andres is in a coffee shop and it sounds like he's at like one of those coffee shop DJ sets, like those pop-ups where people are just like, there's like a lot of activity going on. But I think it's going to make it more fun.
Hopefully no one can hear. Well, hopefully our audio editing is good enough where you can't hear any of the sound.
Yeah. What about everyone else in the coffee shop? Can they hear us talking? Is that part of this experience? Great.
They're all watching, actually. All
Well, in
four
that
other
case,
people.
let's talk about our darkest, deepest secrets in this episode.
Sure.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So instead, I was actually thinking the topic that popped into my mind, my next best thought, was being irrationally optimistic. Have we already covered this or not?
So when we discussed our 5 core principles, this is something that at least I brought up, that within my 5 core principles, I was actually thinking about it before you even said it. Self-love, optimism, presence, honesty, and nurture. Those are my 5 core principles, and inherently they're all it's tied to being optimistic. So why is this important to you? Why is this something that's on your mind? Why did you want to talk about it?
Great question. So yesterday, one of my, I guess like a quasi mentor of mine, he invited me to this yoga workshop and goal setting workshop for 2025. And I'm a little like, I like setting goals with people. Why not? It's interactive, but sometimes I am very much one of those like, oh, New Year's resolutions, like, not really me. I can set goals whenever I want to. But I was like, let's give it a shot. And it's just a yoga class to begin. So I walked out of that with some really cool insights. And one of the main ones that got drilled into me, I had never heard of this before, but it's the 17-second rule, where if you have a positive thought for like reverberates for 17 seconds, and it's part of the whole law of attraction spiel. And it got me thinking, like, how, first of all, is that true? Does science prove that this is like a real thing? But the other is going back to that idea of being unconditionally optimistic, because we talked about before how angel numbers, for example, right? You could see them and think, oh, this is like some, horoscope, like crazy person who's just like using this to confirm their own thinking. But if angel numbers get you to go on the treadmill and make it to the 555 mark, or something you just see and you remind yourself, hey, the universe is kind of like winking at me, like that's cool, that's fun, and it doesn't distract you in any bad way, then it really is just helping you, right? And it actually inhibits you, or it's not helpful if you don't believe in it. You're actually removing yourself from just another area that could give you motivation and bring you back to the present. So in that sense, I think it pays off to be irrationally optimistic, right? Some people are going to look at you and think, wow, that's kind of crazy or weird. But if you in your own heart of hearts like have these different triggers, then I think it only helps us, especially in a world that is in some ways designed to make us pessimistic.
Yeah, I think the phrase irrationally optimistic can be twisted for us to just say that it is rationally optimistic, because we made the conscious effort to be optimistic about everything. When I see an angel number, I think, well, this is a reminder that everything's going to work out and that I have to be present. I'm a big fan of bringing up the book, The Awesome Science of Luck, or Being Lucky, by Peter Ragnar. And it's a book that's kind of muddled with a lot of pseudoscience. But overall, the main message is that if you believe that you are lucky, lucky things will happen to you. If you interview, 500 people on the street randomly, and you ask them, do you believe you're lucky? Well, the people that are more successful will typically say, yeah, I'm a very lucky person. I've had all sorts of lucky breaks. People that have very unfortunate lives will say things like, yeah, I'm very unlucky. I've had a bunch of bad luck streaks. And then the people who don't really believe in luck will have very average, middle-of-the-road lives, which is fine, right? And so there almost seems to be a correlation between believing in luck and actually experiencing luck. And I believe that it's part of reprogramming your subconscious. For example, if you're walking down the street and there's $100 bill wedged beneath a car tire, if you're lucky, your brain is going to spot it and draw your attention towards that. If you are unlucky, your brain instead will draw your attention towards something like, I don't know, dog crap on the ground, right? Where you notice those things, but you don't notice the positives. Towards this idea of the 17-second rule, I have some thoughts, but I'd like for you to kind of expand on that. What does that mean exactly? Are you sustaining a thought? Could you just expand on what that means?
Yeah, the 17-second rule is basically like if you have a positive thought, here, let me actually just pull this up. So the 17-second rule by Abraham Hicks says
Okay.
it takes just 17 seconds to focus on a thought to activate its vibration. So this is kind of in that law of attraction camp where if you have positive thoughts, they will start to find you. And in that sense, relates to what you were saying, because what you were talking about got me thinking about how we're professional dot connectors as humans, right? So everything with us is actually a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you see the $100 bill, you think of yourself as lucky. Your world is now shaped to think, hey, I'm a lucky person. I'm going to find that $100 bill. However, what I think happens to many of us due to childhood trauma and whatever, we start to tell ourselves less positive stories. Remember when we were doing the episode where I was in Belgium and talking about Inside Out, the movie? That is exactly what's happening, right? You have all these, like, as a kid, you never have really negative mantra. You have a great sense of self. And over time, it just erodes into you're telling yourself these weird, twisted messages. So, to your point, it's about reprogramming your subconscious and saying, hey, I am a lucky person. I'm a successful person. And just really finding ways to like intercept bad thought patterns and substitute them with good ones. I thought it was really eye-opening to me that after I did this yoga session and after I came home, all of a sudden I like felt like I had a lot of negative thoughts, and I was like, I just did this to have positive thoughts. Like, what just happened? And I realized I had just become more aware of them. These were thoughts that were already happening. Doing the yoga, kind of talking about this stuff with people that I think brought me good energy, actually made me more aware of some of the negative thoughts. And then I was like, what's going on here? But as I started to sit with them, I started to realize some of those thoughts were designed to protect a different version of me. But as I was moving forward, as I am moving forward in life, I can start to conjure more of the next best thoughts because those are the ones that are serving me in the present and in the future. So I think it's an important concept because that 17 seconds rule is basically saying every single thought that you have that's positive, it has a cascading effect and brings you closer and closer to the present and the things you want.
I think that's really interesting. And it reminds me of this idea that I really try to resonate with. You know, if you take a billionaire, successful business owner, and you strip them away from all their riches and success, it's very likely that they will climb the ranks again very quickly and regain their wealth. And the reason for that is because they already know how to make it there. Because they already have all the know-how and they have the experience, they know what to look out for, what's going to be the lucky break, etc. They have that intuition already built in. So if you could tap into that mindset at one point right now, then you would start approaching that billionaire status. And so, well, how do you approach that? You start reprogramming your subconscious. You start saying, I see lucky bricks everywhere. I understand. My intuition guides me to exactly where I need to go. And you follow your gut. And you know because you have that previous experience. So you're almost tricking, or I don't know the exact word is, but you're tricking yourself to believing that you already are that person. You just have to reprogram. And that's the tricky part because we're indoctrinated with a bunch of limiting beliefs. And these limiting beliefs come from our parents, from our school teachers, etc., that say things like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not attractive enough, you're not this enough. But if you believe in yourself as someone that is the person that you believe you are, then you can overcome those limiting beliefs. But it takes active effort to retrain your mindset. And you have to, one more thing, you have to pursue your next best thought.
Is this episode just like a walking billboard ad? That's funny. I wanted to start by at least sharing my counterpoint to something you said, which was all of these sayings, these beliefs are actually indoctrinated into us by external factors. I actually think the external factors, they have all these voices, like you're saying, like, oh, you need to be an engineer or a doctor. We're the ones who internalize them and turn them negative. So it's not like, your parents aren't specifically trying to tell you, hey, you're not good enough. They're trying to say you have to do XYZ things to be good enough. And then your brain, as a child, doesn't really know what to make of it. So then it'll say, I'm not good enough until I'm a doctor or engineer. And then over time, that poor thought just ends up turning its wheels again and again. And it mutates into this strange belief system that like now you have to reprogram against. And the other thought that came to me was, as you were talking about the billionaire story, you've of course shared it with me a few times, this parable, which is great. I think it's a cool one. Like if you put a billionaire and you just drop them onto another part of the world, they'd probably figure it out because they have a great mindset, they have experience, whatever else. And to me, this what just clicked to me was like how true this feels, I guess. Like as you said it again, I was like, wow, like that's true. I really do feel like if you took some guy like that, or the people I've met even, and you put them on another place on earth, they would do the same thing. And it just shows, right, how powerful the mindset is and how our excuses for, hey, this person has a nice background or has lived in XYZ countries. That's why they are able to do these things. You kind of strip that away and it's actually just about mindset, and mindset can be shaped based on any experience, based on any background. It's something that you get to control. And as you were saying it, as I realized that there's a power of repetition here, right? With your subconscious, especially because the bad thoughts have been reverberating. They don't go away. As humans, we love to ruminate. So anything that is like a lower vibration type of message, it'll continue to sneak into your subconscious. So it takes a lot of active effort to keep reprogramming and repeating the positive messages. I think, for example, even if we were never to publish a podcast episode, I think that is where the power of this type of effect comes in, right? We do just have to listen to each other as friends and like kind of repeat some of these messages. But I think that's actually a huge part of the game. And it's not something, at least for me, it's like, oh, are we just repeating ourselves? Are we saying some of the same things over again? Is that going to be not useful to an audience, to someone else? But the reality is you have to hear the same thing. In marketing, they say at least 7 times for it to stick.
That's why I keep bringing up the idea of your 5 core principles, and maybe you can even go beyond that. I really think if you have 5 core principles and you just really drill them into your head, you will start to embody that person. And for me, I say self-love, optimism, honesty, presence, and nurture. Those are my 5 core principles, and I repeat them to myself every once in a while. Every morning, I say to myself, I am unwaveringly honest with myself and those around me. And I have a few other things, and I try to really reshape who I am. I almost think about it like this. I'm going to use an analogy that I just came up with on the spot. Imagine you were Michelangelo and you were trying to carve out the statue of David on a block of Play-Doh, right? You you probably would remove big chunks, etc. And you start to mold it. But as you're working on one side, because it's Play-Doh, maybe the other side gets a little lumpy, and the details that you had before might start to lose their definitiveness. And the only way to maintain that definition throughout is by constantly tweaking all those little fine details. Because if you stop, then it's going to become lumpy. So that repetition is all about refining those details. And if you want to be a billionaire or if you want to be happy, then you have to do and say the things that are going to make you happy. If you believe you have a happy life, then you will live a happy life. I often play this game, and I think I brought it up with you as well here, that imagine you're a trillionaire. What would you do with your money? What would you do with your time? The answer I often get is, I would invest. But why would you invest? You already have so much money, you could never spend it all. You could buy the moon, you could buy yachts, you could buy everything. Nothing could stop you. So what would you spend your time on? Oh, well, I'd spend my time maybe being a philanthropist. Okay, so you want to help people. So you don't need money to help people. Or I would spend my time dedicating myself to art. I'd spend my time dedicating myself to singing. I would create an app that would help people connect, families connect. And so when you assume that once you have the money, you can get the thing that you want, then you're living in the mindset of a person that's not a trillionaire. But if you are a trillionaire, then you just do the things that you want, and you know the money's going to show up, and the means of doing that are going to show up somewhere or another.
Yeah. This kind of, it's funny where this dovetailed to your point. It's like when you're goal setting, you can either focus on the outcome. Hey, I want to be a trillionaire, or whatever variation or permutation of that. Or you can focus on the actions you want to take, the process you want to follow, creating the app, learning how to paint, learning how to DJ, whatever those things are. And that was something that was also brought up during this yoga meetup, was basically talking about the Mahabharata. It's a very famous old Sanskrit book, a story about how there's this guy. I'll simplify this. There's this guy who's supposed to go into battle, but the people on the other side are some of his family and friends. So he's like grappling with this idea. And the other guy, kind of, I guess you could call him God, is basically saying, hey, like, don't worry about being a coward and all the outcomes. Focus on the current action of doing your job. That's called dharma in my culture. It means your duty. However, today we often think about the outcomes because that's just how capitalist society is, right? It's like, oh, if I do this, how much revenue is this going to bring in? What is the ultimate end goal of this, right? But in reality, that separates you so much from the action and what's in your control that it removes you from the present. Now you're always thinking about the future. So I think going into the new year, if you are starting to set those goals, I think it's really important to see them as clear actions you can take, right? That is how SMART goals are defined. But goals in general should be focused on the actions versus just the outcomes, because the actions are under your control and things you can do. So, for example, I want to create this app to help distance families connect with each other. Now I can go about it and say, and in fact, that's how I started, was launch the app and get my first 25 users. Well, that is somewhat under my control, but also in many ways it can be kind of, I can game that goal. I can do many different ways to manipulate it. Whereas what I can immediately control is a time block for 30 minutes a day where I work on this and I spend some sort of, focused time on creating this. I tried that for the first time today and I already saw the best results because what had been happening was, oh, I have this like crazy goal. So I'm going to like do these random things that I think will get me closer to it. But if it's not done by 2025, then I fail. But how do I, kind of track milestones to that goal? Well, it's actually in the actions. It's the time block. That's what I had this coach kind of helped me realize was in the absence of like a real achievable, actionable goal, we struggle to actually control the outcome. And trying to force ourselves to do that leads to a lot of kind of inner turmoil, especially if you have any level of ADD that I do. So I'm curious. My tip was basically to focus on the action, not the outcome. We've talked about it before, but especially in the lens of goal setting. And I'm curious, Andres, what you would say about this topic.
It's a tough question. So I definitely think that setting goals is really important. And I'm a big fan of every morning. What I have this habit, at least every weekday, where I write down my top 10 goals every single day. And it'll be top 10 goals of whatever. It could be, get a PhD, write a publication, climb Mount Everest, interview at Harvard, whatever. It's just a bunch of different goals of the most outlandish, crazy goals that I have dreams. Start my own company, become a machine learning engineer, learn quantum mechanics. And I'll put those all in my top 10 goals list before I do any work. And then the next day, I'll write that top 10 goals list again without looking at the previous day. And what happens is that there are some goals that stay there. And then there's some transient goals, right? And when you look at your goals like months later, you create a little flipbook of a stack of goals. When you look at it months later, you see that your goals begin to shift, and your motivations and what you really want really begins to shine. And for example, one of my goals, and this was after I was uh, recently single, was talk to women. That was a goal. I want to talk to women. And I wrote that goal down every single day for a couple months. And then one day it switched. It was talk with women. And it was just like a massive mental shift where I realized, okay, maybe I should approach it a little differently. Instead of saying that I talk to them, I have to convince them. Maybe I can just be friends with them and learn from them and actually enjoy my experience as a human being. I can. There's more to this world than just finding a partner. I can actually find friendships along the way, and so that's an actionable thing that you can do every single day that I still do to this day. I apply it more to my work now and less so to my top 10 goals like of life. But when I was doing my PhD, it really helped me uh, really focus because then when you see your goals every single day, it reminds you like, oh, this is already like, I already know what I'm doing. And this is exactly what I'm working on. This is how I'm going to do it. And then you start embodying that person that already achieved the goal. You start tapping into their like tips and secrets of how to be successful because you're embodying that to begin with before you start any work.
I really like this, the ten goal flip book, and it changes. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't want to take credit for this because this is from a book that I really love and admire. It's called 177 Secrets, 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class by Steve Siebold. It's got the cheesiest name possible, and you would probably find it in a discount bin of a bookstore under the self-help section. But it is one of those books that contains so much wealth of knowledge and tips that anyone who just decides that, oh, I'm too good for this, or that's cheesy, well, they're going to maintain that random chance life or possibly the unlucky life. They're going to say, well, I don't want to better myself. And so I learned this top 10 trick from that book. I modified it myself because he said just do it for 90 days or something like that. But I found so much power from it that I still do it to this day. And he also talks about a lot of the things we talk about on here. He has this one phrase that I really like. He says, I cannot fail. I can only learn and grow. Or the past is only as relevant as it pertains to my present and future and to create a more bountiful future. You don't have to live in your past. You can tap into it if you need to, but we ruminate. So it's a wealth of knowledge and it's a resource that I will recommend for the rest of my life.
Yeah, we need to get sponsored by Steve Siebold or like get him on this podcast if he's still alive. I'm
Honestly, he's probably
yeah,
still alive. Yeah.
yeah, okay, we got to check him out. He's honestly, you shared it. He shared the book with me. I read at least one fourth of it, and I agree, it's very powerful stuff. And I'm not surprised you got it from that book. So I think it's been mentioned at least 3 or 4 times. So I think all we need to do is get our first 100 listeners. Listeners, if you're listening to this, we got a book recommendation for you. But yeah, a few quick thoughts. So I love this, the ten goal flip book. I think I'm going to actually try this out. A few reasons I really liked it is one, like you said, you'll start to observe which goals are more transient over time and be like, oh, these are my main top priorities. And those will start to bubble up as you go. And it sounds like it also offers you the freedom to continue to improve on those goals. Like you gave the example of talking to versus with. So I really like that because the words do matter when it comes, especially when it comes to shaping your goals. Similarly, I was reminded by a framework I learned about yesterday, and it was suppose there's some like folklore about it being from Warren Buffett, but potentially not. It's the 25-5 rule for setting goals. So what we did was this guy, he had us, Tom. Tom had us set up 25 goals, just like straight up have a piece of paper, write 25 goals in different categories of your life that you'd like to achieve next year. Then he made us choose 5 of them. What are the top 5? Like, if you do these 5 right, the rest will come naturally and you don't have to focus on them. So then someone asks, all right, we picked our top five. What do we do with the rest? So he said Warren Buffett recommends that you throw all of those away and make sure you never do those. You only do the five because all the others are side quests that should either happen naturally or are going to distract you. Now, I personally don't think that's necessary. You don't have to throw all these other baby goals out of the window. But I did think it was an interesting exercise nonetheless, because similar to your 10-page flip book, it starts to help you understand what are those like kind of you woke up in the morning and you're like, this would be cool. Or like you were influenced by whatever you saw online or something like that. Versus like in your heart of hearts, what are the things you really strive to be? And I wonder if there's even an opportunity to overlay these types of goals with your principles and say, hey, do these actually fit together? Are they congruent? Because at least for me, I get shiny object syndrome, right? There's so many things I could be, could do. And it's easy for me to get sucked up into what I think was somewhat of an indoctrination for me, which was like to be the smartest person in the room. Like to be the most successful, you have to be the smartest. And that means you have to be doing the coolest work that's possible. So then when I go on LinkedIn and I see someone who owns a hedge fund or a VC firm, I mean, that is cool work. And don't get me wrong, I want to do some of it, but I want to do it for the right reasons. Is it because I want to do this? Or is it because it's been kind of shoved into my face that I should want to do this? I think is an important distinction. Cool.
Yeah.
If you have commentary on that, go for it.
No, I definitely think that. So you made a comment saying that Warren Buffett, his 25-5 rule might be a little excessive, but I also want to also bring us back to the idea that if you throw a billionaire into the other side of the planet, they'll probably figure it out again. And I think it's really tempting to say, well, that's probably not going to work. But in this case, you're actually hearing from the source itself, right? They're saying, do this. And that's going to lead your arrow towards success. And it's going to prevent it from going in the wrong directions. It's going to keep you in that narrow path that you know it's going to work. So I would say when in that case, maybe it is worth listening. And I'm going to try it myself just because it's a billionaire telling you how to be successful. I'm not saying that Warren Buffett himself is the happiest man on earth or actually lives a fulfilling life. I'm just saying that he has the advice that he gives might be worth listening to the fullest, just because he is in that position. And of course, privilege is a big part of all this, and we avoided this topic. And then we can talk about how we can navigate reaching our goals and overcoming our limited beliefs in a world of privilege and etc. But yeah, this is one of the last thoughts I have. I think the top 10 goal idea is the same thing. It's just a way of keeping you narrowly focused towards your goals. Because I find that by my fifth or sixth goal that I write every day, I'm like, okay, I got to put something down for 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. And then sometimes I remember, oh, I have to do this thing. But usually it's like the first 3 are what I have to do. And the rest are just, if I have time, maybe I'll do this.
Yeah. And one clarification, I feel like we're both kind of giving asterisks, but being a billionaire doesn't mean, that you're going to have always the next best thoughts. So I think when we talk about billionaire and trillionaire, these like exercises, first of all, yes, having money could make you very happy and at least free from some of the human suffering. So I don't want to discount that. But at the same time, happiness is always going to be your definition of it and something you choose to be. But I think these billionaire exercises, if you're a billionaire, could you go and generate the same amount of wealth or like success in this another part of the world? I think that's a very valid kind of thought experiment. And then same thing, right? If you're a billionaire, you're probably going to walk a little differently and act differently than you would be if you were not. So in those senses, I think it is worth kind of extrapolating on the extremes, right? Like what would it look like? Everything we talked about was about goal setting and how to focus on falling in love with the process, right? You hear this all the time, but when we say falling in love with the process, it means taking actions and really loving the craft, trusting that the good will come after. So, and part of it is even if it doesn't come, even if the result you are secretly hoping for, we all do, doesn't happen, you now have completed the actions and learned something through that journey that will set you up for the next journey and success. So it's a ever evolving process. But I personally love that. Someone with like slight ADHD, it's like I love knowing that if I just control the action, I have full control over that. I can beat the odds in terms of my own attention. I can find ways to do it. But if something is very vague, hey, I want to launch this amazing product and get 25 users, there is so many different paths to getting there. So I think having set actions, at least for someone like me, is very important. And then I also like, your idea of like a continuously evolving goal list. I hope you guys will consider some of the advice that we gave. I mean, some of it is from billionaires and this guy named Steve Siebold who wrote a book with 177 secrets.
So I'd like to leave our audience with a question, and it's a very pertinent question. And just really simply, what are your top 10 goals? And after you write those top 10 goals, what really matters in those goals? So I invite all of you to try out the 10 goal flip book.
Nice. And I think part of it is just being bold and putting them out there, knowing they will change, right? It's a flip book for a reason. It continues to evolve. So we'll share what ours are at the time. And we're super excited to hear about your 10 goals and your next best thought.